love you. Thank you so much. Soul City, what an amazing honor. Can we give a big round of applause to Pastor Jeannie Stevens, just right off the top, Pastor Jarrett, the whole leadership team here at Soul City. What a gift. What a gift to be here. I'm really grateful. And I'm going to start this off with a confession because we're in church. I have never spoken on a Sunday morning before. And I feel so grateful that I've been asked many times over the years. And I've always said no, and I'm not available. And the truth is, it's because deep down, I just didn't feel qualified. Did not feel qualified. And so I said yes to big sold-out business events and stadiums and arenas, and yes to Oprah's stages, and yes to over 20 keynotes for Tony Robbins and all of these events. And I just, every time, I felt called to do it, but I didn't feel qualified. And so I got a text from Jeannie. Got a text from Pastor Jeannie inviting me to be part of today with each of you and to come here and speak on a Sunday. And the first thing I thought is, okay, how am I going to say no? And so I didn't reply. I didn't reply because I couldn't type the words no yet, and I didn't know why. And before I knew it, y'all, 7 days went by, and I still hadn't replied. And I was like, she's my friend. I'm going to tell her the truth. But I couldn't shake this feeling. Like, I couldn't shake this feeling deep down inside that said you're supposed to say yes. Like, it almost felt like a call that I was hitting do not disturb on, or the hold button, or not answering. And what I couldn't shake, and I don't know if you've ever had this feeling, but I couldn't shake this idea of like, okay, you spend your whole life pouring into other people, helping them build the confidence to believe they're worthy of the calling on their life. And I spend so much of my time talking to people about how God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. And how can I say that if I'm the one not answering the call, right? And so I wrote back and said yes. And now I'm here with you today on a Sunday morning. And first time ever, and I'm so grateful and honored. And in that 7-day window, the thing I just couldn't shake, every time, and I prayed about it. I prayed about it a lot. Because I was like, why can't I just, what's the thing, right? And I just kept getting this strong knowing or this strong whisper that I'm here today to talk to someone who's doubting themselves out of their own destiny.
Thank you.
Someone who's doubting themselves out of their own destiny. And it's so easy to do this. It's so easy to listen to all the thoughts in our own head and put all the words of our own self-doubt on a pedestal instead of putting the words that he says about us on a pedestal, right? It's so easy to do that. And when I thought about today, I just couldn't shake the feeling that I'm supposed to be here. And I don't know if it's one person in this room or one person in the overflow room. Y'all have an overflow room right now online. But I just couldn't shake this feeling that someone like me, most of my life, y'all, I have doubted myself out of my own destiny. So if you're someone who's ever had that self-doubt be so loud, right? If you're someone who maybe, you know Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, but you forget those words, and you replace them with the words of, I can do all things through myself, I've got to carry it, and I just don't feel like I'm enough, right? So many of us, and this is me most of my life, we would shrink. We shrink who we are. And we dim our own light, and we play it small, and we got that rejection, and that person hurt us and pulled the rug out from underneath us, and that huge setback came in our lives. And we have the words of the beautiful Psalm 65 up on our wall that says, God is within her, she will not fall. But instead, we think, no, I'm going to trust my own words. My own words are, I don't have what it takes. My own words are, this isn't what love feels like, but maybe I'm not worthy of a better relationship than this, right? My own words are, my body's not enough, so I'm just going to keep hating on it, even though it's made in his image. right? So often we listen to our own words, and it gets to the point where we start to not answer the call. We start to sometimes not even hear the call. And before we know it, we actually risk doubting ourselves out of our own destiny and doubting ourselves over the call God has on our life. And for some of us, it might be right now that part of your calling is to actually go for it and grow that business idea. Or it might be to go, you know what? I know I'm called to heal that wound in my family. I know I'm called to be the one that forgives. Not because that person's right? But because it's my calling. The one to break the generational cycle. Maybe you know right now you're called to share your story with the world and to write the first word to your book right now in the service. But you've been holding back thinking, maybe I don't have what it takes, maybe no one else will care. Maybe you're called to be up here on the stage singing, preaching, or anything else, but you've been not answering the call. So I'm here today to talk to you, to the person who has listened to all the I'm nots over his great I am, right? And on who we're going to learn to trust. And so, here's the thing is, I want to just thank you because it feels like family here. Jeannie was right. I want to thank you for welcoming me in, and just feels like being part of your church family already here at Soul City. And so I'm not going to be up here sharing my story or the highlight reel. The media always likes to say the same story, which is Denny's waitress builds billion-dollar company. That's always the story in the press. And the real story behind the story, the testimony, the parts of unremitting rejection and setbacks and self-doubt and how God showed up all along the way, even when I didn't see a way, I'm going to share part of that today. And my hope and my prayer is that someone walks out of this room today and they lean back on that testimony anytime you're tempted to forget whose you are and tempted to forget that you're actually answering the call on your life. And when you're doing that, it doesn't matter the setbacks you go through. It doesn't matter who comes up against you at all. And so I don't know if you're like me. Growing up, I thought I knew what I was going to do when I grew up. I would sit in my living room every day and I'd watch Oprah. And I was in this suburb of Washington State in kind of the middle of nowhere, didn't know anybody who knew anybody. But I'd watch her every day on my TV, and I had this knowing, this whisper. You know how God gives us whispers. Whether we listen to him or not, it's a whole other thing, but I got this whisper like, oh, one day you're going to share other people's stories with the world. You're going to host a show like her, and you're going to meet Oprah. Had that whisper. I was like, that makes no sense, right? But sometimes the call does not make any sense. I need to remember that too. And so I did all the jobs trying to see that dream come to pass. So bag groceries in the grocery store, push grocery carts. I was a waitress at Denny's. I sliced meat in the deli, all the different jobs. And eventually, I landed in what felt like my dream job. It was anchoring the news and reporting and sharing other people's stories with the world. And I thought, like, God did this. Like, I'm here. I've arrived. Like, the open door. And what I didn't know was I was about to have a huge season of setback and self-doubt. And what I know beyond a shadow of a doubt is that so often our setbacks in life are actually God's setups, right, for what we're called to do. But we just don't know it at the time, and usually they just suck. And I was about to enter a big one, right? So I have a hereditary skin condition called rosacea, and I'd been to dermatologists and tried all the creams, and there's no cure for it. And for me, it gets like almost like imagine red welts. They get really bumpy all over my lip, my cheeks, my forehead. And I'd always been able to cover it with makeup. So no one really knew. It was no big deal. And one day I had made it up in markets, and I was up to Portland, Oregon, anchoring the news. So I was talking live over the air one day to millions of people, and I hear in my earpiece from the producer, there's something on your face. There's something on your face. You need to wipe it off. You need to wipe it off. And so you can't talk back because you're live. And but I knew what it was. So during the commercial break, I glanced down at the mirror. And if you imagine desert clay cracking, and like bright red coming through, that was happening all over my face. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to cover it. So I covered it, and the makeup wouldn't cover. First time ever. And the HD lights are really hot. And anyhow, it's like, okay, it's going to be okay. So I just kept going to the rest of the newscast, and within a few minutes, I hear my earpiece, it's still there. It's still there. And so the end of that day, I was like, this is no big deal. I'm just going to find something else. So I spent, eventually my paycheck, which wasn't very big, trying to just figure out something that worked. I tried like the department store brands and the drugstore brands and pro makeup artist lines. Literally nothing would work. And all of a sudden, I entered this huge season of self-doubt where I would be live on the air and I would hear again, Jamie, I don't know if you noticed, but it's still there right now. And I would be thinking thoughts as I'm talking live to viewers. I'd be thinking thoughts of, are you going to get fired? Like, are you costing the station ratings right now? Are viewers turning on the channel and turning it off and looking, like, all those thoughts? And it was one of the first times I ever remember a really strong knowing hitting me one day, right? I had this feeling, maybe you've had this in your life, maybe you've had it before, maybe you've had it recently, but I got this really strong feeling that said, like, if you cannot find anything else that works for you, there's probably a whole lot of other people out there that feel the same way. What if you can figure out how to create something that works for you? It's going to help a whole lot of people. So I had that whisper, that knowing, and really quick, y'all, maybe you've had this happen, really quick, my head was like, oh, but you've got no money, no connections, you don't know anyone in the beauty industry, you are not qualified. So I sat in that place between like the knowing and having all this, like, oh, okay. And so I didn't do anything about it. And sometimes when we don't listen to the whisper, something else big will hit us over the head, right? With God trying to get our attention. And one day, literally, I was on the news anchor desk, just praying I wasn't getting fired. And I had this moment hit me. It was like, this makes no sense. There's thousands of makeup companies out there. Like, why doesn't anything work for you? And then I had this realization, well, I've never really seen a woman who has like bright red bumps and welts on her face saying like, buy this product, it's great, right? At that point in time, it was all, maybe some of you remember this, was only overly photoshopped images of sort of like what appeared to be flawless skin. And I had this realization, like, wait a minute. From the time I was a little kid, I used to watch those commercials and like see the ads in magazines, and I loved them. Like, I aspired to look that way, but deep down inside, they always made me feel like I wasn't enough. And it hit me, y'all, like a ton of bricks. I'm like, wait a minute, what if I can't shake this feeling because it's not even about making a product? Like, what if I'm supposed to figure out somehow how to make a product that works, but what if I'm actually supposed to do it because I'm supposed to try to shift the definition of the entire beauty industry so that people stop feeling like they're not enough? Now, that was a God-sized dream that seemed ridiculous for someone who has no money, no connections, doesn't know anything about beauty industry. And I had this moment where I'm like, okay, what if? Like, what is this whisper I can't stop shaking? What if I figure out a product, but then what if I put real people as models, like every age and shape and size and skin tone and skin challenge like I have? What if I call them beautiful and mean it? What if there's something I could do to help shift the definition of beauty in the entire beauty industry for every little girl out there who's about to see these ads and not see herself in them and start doubting herself, and every grown person who still does? I was like, oh, that felt like a call. That felt like a call that I was like, I don't even know how to hit the answer button on that, but I feel like I've got to. I feel like I've got to. And these moments in our life, which is what I want to talk to you about today, these moments in our life, whether we hit answer or not, whether we hit do not disturb or not, whether we hit answer for a minute and go back to our self-doubt and put it on hold, and then the elevator music runs out. What we do in those moments can define everything. And I felt this just conviction so strong, like I needed to be obedient to this, even though it meant I was giving up my dream job. I was like, God, this is my dream job. But sometimes knowing when to let go of a dream matters as much as knowing when to go after one, right? And I was like, okay, who am I going to trust in this situation? And it didn't make sense in the natural, but I trusted it. And then on my honeymoon flight to South Africa, so I quit my job. My husband quit his job, right? We go on our honeymoon flight to South Africa. We write the business plan for It Cosmetics, which is the least romantic thing you can ever do. I won't go deeper than that. Least romantic thing you can ever do on your honeymoon. I do not advise it. Wrote the business plan, came back just all in, poured every penny we had into it. What I didn't know, because I thought, I'm being obedient. This is just going to work. This is going to be amazing, right? What I didn't know is from the second we launched this company in our living room, went all in, poured every penny we had into it. The second we did that, it would be over 3 years before we could even afford to pay ourselves a penny. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of no's. Every single store I used to save my Denny's tip money to buy a lipstick in, all of them said no. And not only they say no, the words they would always use, especially the department stores, they would always say, because they would see my images, right, of real women in all ages and shapes and skin tones and sizes, and they would say, women will not buy makeup from images like that. And they'd always say these same words, that you have to use images of unattainable aspiration, which means you cannot look like that because it's not real, right? And I was like, okay, I get that's what's always worked, but what if women are sick and tired of buying products from images that don't look like them? Like, what if? And it was just no after no after no, to the point where we were teetering on bankruptcy. We had nothing left. And so finally I was like, okay, we're going to go direct. All these stores keep telling us no to carry our products. We're going to go direct to consumer. We're just going to go direct because this product's so good, right? We had a product. We'd poured every penny we had, did hundreds of samples. We eventually had a product that worked for me. And I'm like, this is going to be huge. So why is everyone saying no? We're going to go direct. The problem was we had no money. So we couldn't afford to hire anybody to build a website, any of it. So my husband went out to Barnes & Noble, and he bought that big yellow book called HTML for Dummies. And he comes home, builds our entire first website, and I'm like, this is going to be huge. And I'll never forget the day it went live. I was like a kid on Christmas morning. I was running around our office, which was our living room, and I'm like, this is going to be huge. And the moment the site went live, we were about an hour into it, no orders. 2 hours in, no orders. I see a lot of you nodding. You've had this experience. 3 hours in, no orders. The whole first day goes by, no orders. The second day, no orders. A week goes by, no orders. And eventually I did to him what's so easy to do. If you've ever worked with a friend or partner or someone you love, I'm like, it's broken. You did it wrong. I'm like, you built it wrong. I'm like, this product is so good. There's no way you built this website right, and we're just getting no orders. You did it wrong. And this went on and on. The weeks went by, no orders. And I'll never forget the moment our very first order came in. And it came in, and I was like, I knew it. I was running around our living room. And he comes up to me, and he goes, that was me. He goes, I placed that order to prove to you it's not broken. I didn't do it wrong. And I'm just like, oh. And it went on and on and on. And y'all, I was like, I don't know if you've ever done this. I was stalking LinkedIn. And I was like, hey, all the buyers are telling me no everywhere, so I'm going to find other people that work there. And I was stalking LinkedIn for Sephora and Ulta Beauty and QVC, everybody, and just sending anyone I could find samples. And after a few years of doing this, we were literally at most 1 order, 2 orders a day, right? Barely, bless you, barely hanging on. And I was like, okay, I got a call from Sephora that they want to have a meeting. It's like, this is going to be huge. Could barely afford the plane ticket to San Francisco. Flew out, and to keep a very long story short, it was one of the most painful no's I had ever received. I remember leaving the building just holding back tears because I thought this is the moment. I remember when the elevators open on the high rise on Market Street to Sephora. It was like Devil Wears Prada. You know where they open, you're like, oh. And I remember looking at what I was wearing, oh. Just walk in, and I was putting them on such a pedestal, thinking that was what's going to do it. And so when it was a no, and I was leaving in the elevator on the way down, I just remember holding back tears, just trying not, I was like, I am a CEO, I cannot cry, and the elevator is packed with people that probably work there, so I was like, I can't. It was horrible because I didn't know how we were going to make it. And we just kept going and going and going. And then I got a call that literally was life-changing. The head of QVC Beauty. How many of you guys know what QVC is, if you're familiar with it? Yeah. So it's a live television shopping channel. They broadcast to over 100 million homes. And and I'd been sending them samples for years. And so the head of QVC Beauty, a guy named Alan Burke, who's like a legend, he's sort of like Anna Wintour in fashion, and he had taken QVC, some of you might remember this, in the early days, a long time ago, they would sell like chopping knives and be like, buy now, and everyone would panic, and they were kind of known for being cheesy, a little cheesy, and he transformed that. He got all the most luxurious beauty companies in the world to want to sell there. He built a multi-billion-dollar beauty division. So he's a legend, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if Alan Burke wants to do a call with me, like, there's no way it's a no. I'm like, this is huge. So I remember I was like pacing, I was like praying, like, God, move through me. God, like, I know you have this, like, my life's divinely orchestrated, like, just pray. And I remember I was pacing around our living room, like power posing. I was trying everything. Pray, power pose, like telling myself to be lucky to have us, like all of it, trying to get in like a peak state. and I remember answering the call. And he's like, hello, Jamie, this is Alan Burke with QVC. And I'm like, Alan, it's so great to meet you. And he's like, listen, I wanted to tell you, first of all, we've received your samples, all of them. And I'm like, oh, great. And I'm like, the product's life-changing. And he's like, yeah, and I wanted to call you myself directly. And I wanted to let you know that I've just had a meeting with our entire buying team, and it's unanimous that you are not the right fit for QVC or for our customers. And first of all, when someone tells you you're not the right fit, especially if you're someone like me who's like dealt with a lot of self-doubt your whole life and you've already been telling yourself you're not the right fit, someone tells you that, it sort of hits different. And I remember tears just start streaming down my face. And I hope he cannot see this because obviously it's not Zoom yet. We're on a phone. Tears are streaming down and I immediately go into repitching. I'm like, oh, but Alan, we are the right fit. And I start telling him all the reasons. And he thanked me for loving QVC and said it's a no. And I remember getting off that call. And I don't know if you've ever had an experience like this where you just crawl in your bed and you pull your covers over and you cry yourself to sleep. And then you wake up and you hoped it was a dream. And it wasn't the next morning. And you're like, oh. And I remember, you guys, this went on for days. And I literally would just pray. And every time I prayed and got still, I'm like, God, like tell me what to do here. Because we're years into this. And every time I'd pray and get still, I felt like God said, you're supposed to be doing this. You're supposed to keep going. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to answer this call. I'm like, am I hearing you wrong? Because no one else seems to agree with you. You know what I mean? Have you ever been in that moment in your life where like, God, why am I not hearing you clearly? Because I think I'm being obedient. I think I'm doing the thing. And I think I'm, raising my hand. And I think I'm sharing my idea. And I think I put my work and my art and my ideas and my love and my heart out there. And every time I'm doing it, it's not happening, God. It's not happening. Am I hearing you wrong? And that's the state I was in. But every time I would do that, I just kept feeling this knowing that we're supposed to keep going. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it did not make sense in the natural, and it didn't make sense by any other proof I could see around me or any other way I could see. And what I know for sure is like when we have that knowing, when we feel that calling, even when we get knocked down, like those aren't the moments we give up. Those are the moments that we stare our fear straight in the eye and know that our faith is bigger than it. And our purpose is bigger than it, and our calling is bigger than it, and our power is bigger in it. And those are the moments, right, that with God and grace and grit, we get back up and we keep going. Those are the moments. And so we did. We kept going and going. And then I got a call that did completely changed my life forever. A huge potential investor, very well known, private equity company. They're known for taking sort of like unknown pre-revenue brands like startups and turning them into these big brands we all buy in grocery stores and big box retailer. And they gotten hold of one of our products and of our main product and loved it and wanted to have a meeting. And I'm like, okay. And we did meeting after meeting. And I was like, if they invest in us, I was putting them on such a pedestal. I was like, if they invest, A, we're not going to go bankrupt. Like, B, maybe they can use their power, their leverage to get us into all these stores that keep saying no. So I said, okay, this is it. And we did meeting after meeting. We got down to the final meeting where my husband and I flew up. We presented our whole product pipeline, and we got to the very end of the meeting. And I'll never forget this moment. I was here. The head guy was 3 feet from me right here, and his whole team was behind him. They're amazing. He was 3 feet from me. My husband is on the other side. And it got to the very end of the meeting, and he says to me, congratulations. Like, you should be really proud. This is a really great product. But it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in cosmetics. And when he said that, I was so used to hearing no's. But I asked him why. I said, can you tell me why? Because feedback is usually often a gift. I said, can you tell me why? And he just got really quiet. And he says, do you want me to be really honest with you? And I was like, yes, please. And he was just quiet. I remember to the point where it was just like silent. And I felt my heartbeat in my ears. So I was like, what's happening? And he then says to me, he's 3 feet from me. He says after a really long pause, he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And I remember when he said those words, I never even felt anger toward him. When he said those words, it was like instant, like my whole body flooded with like a lifetime of self-doubt and body doubt. So it was almost like I was staring my own fear straight in the eye. But why I'm sharing this story is when he said those words, you guys, I will never forget this moment the rest of my life. When he said those words to me, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. I got this feeling like so strong right here. I can feel it right now like it's then. I got this feeling that said, he's wrong. Like, he's wrong. Like, I felt it. I didn't know how to prove that at the time, but I felt that feeling. And when I look back at that moment, here's what I know happened. Here's what I know happened in that moment. This guy gave me a no, but God gave me a knowing, right? Like, he gave me a no, but he gave me a knowing, that feeling that I couldn't shake, right? And when you think about this in our lives, how many no's are we getting all the time? How many no's are we getting all around us? And how many no's are we telling ourselves? All day. But if we get still and we ask him, that's when we get the knowing. That's when we get the knowing. And so much of our life and our success and our relationships and our joy and our self-worth and our calling come down to which one we listen to. Do we listen to the no's or do we listen to the knowing? Right? Because when we're telling ourselves these no's all the time, we might say, oh, no, I'm not enough. I don't have what it takes. But when you ask him, and if you've done this, you know this, when you ask him, he has a different answer. Right? He says, oh, but you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Right? When you say, oh, my body is not enough, I'm going to hate on it all day long. But you ask him, and he says, you are made in my image. Right? When you say, oh, I did get rejected, and I put myself out there, and 15 publishers said no, and I've been on the dating app for 3.5 years, and you don't even want to know the stories, and you go over and over and over, and this person betrayed me, and that happened, and this business partner left me, and this but you ask him, and he says, but no weapon formed against you shall prosper, right? So who are we going to listen to? And also, who are we going to lean on? What are we going to lean on? All the no's or the knowing? And that day, y'all, and it's not easy. It's easier to listen to all the no's, especially for a lot of us that have family that's very used to listening to no's, or family telling us the no's, right? It's all around us everywhere. And it takes commitment and vision and a relationship with the one who created you to know he's the one who's telling the truth. And he's the one who gives you the knowing. And I remember from that moment forward, oh my gosh, it was 6 years until I heard from him again, which I'll tell you about in a second. But every time I would hear his voice repeating those words, I'd have to turn down the volume, like a giant volume dial, and because this is my self-doubt would just start going. And I'd turn up the volume on that moment, that knowing, and keep going. And Fast forward to a whole lot of more send-outs and all the things, and we were at a big beauty expo where there were 6,000 people there, and QVC had a booth, and I had never met anyone in person, but I saw they had a giant booth, and I went right up to them and poured my heart out to the buyer there. She agreed to have a meeting, okay, and we flew to Pennsylvania, had a meeting with QVC in person finally after years of no's, and we got our very first yes. Got our very first yes. So that's how I felt until I learned what that yes meant. It meant we had one shot in a 10-minute window to sell our products, right? And to either hit their sales goal or not come back. And I was like, okay. At that point, we're still doing 1 to 2 orders a day on our website that did work. And I learned that we have to sell 6,000 units of product to hit their sales goal in 10 minutes. And I was like, okay. And then I learned we somehow have to manufacture, pay for, ship in, all the things. I then go on air for 10 minutes, and if it doesn't sell, we take it all back, and we're not paid. So you should never say yes to that, ever. But we were so desperate, and we prayed, and we were like, okay, we feel like we're supposed to do this. We feel like we're supposed to do it, and we had no money. So we applied for SBA loans. 22 banks said no, and they should have. The 23rd bank, California Bank and Trust, gave us a SBA loan to cover the amount of the purchase order and a little bit more. We took that little bit more. We hired third-party consultants. They help so many people sell their products in stores and on QVC. They help a lot of people. The problem was they all told me the same thing. They said, if you're going to have a shot at hitting these numbers, if you're going to have a shot at making it, here's what you need to do. You need to put this type of model to demonstrate your product in your 10 minutes, which was all the same skin tone. They look like they're 12. They have no skin issue. And I'm like, okay. I get that works for a lot of people, but what if? I was like, what if I put a model in their 70s or 80s, and then someone with acne, and someone with hyperpigmentation, and under-eye circles, and every age and shape and size and skin tone, and what if I take my own makeup off on national TV and prove the product works? I'll show my bright red rosacea. And they were mortified. And they wanted me to win, right? So we did all of this. We finally got to the point where we flew out to QVC for our one big shot. And I felt like 10 minutes was going to change everything. So I went a week early, and I sat all alone in this rental car right out front of the door of QVC, which is the size of a university campus. I just sat there watching the front door, which somehow made sense at the time. But it's just knowing the next time I walk in that door, I'm either coming out with my whole life change or I'm coming out bankrupt, but it's going to happen. And I sat there in that car praying and crying and asking God to take it from me because it felt so heavy, and asking him what to do. Because I'm listen, and here's where self-doubt comes in. Here's where inauthenticity comes in. And then temptation, when you see other people doing something that seems like it's working, but it's not right in your soul, that's when the temptation comes in, because I was like, okay, God, what if I just do it their way, which isn't authentic to what I'm doing, but what if I do it their way, and then I don't go bankrupt, and I make money, and then later I'll listen to you, and later I'll do it authentically. And I had all these moments in that car, and I will never forget, y'all. I really, truly feel like God spoke to me in that car, because I know you cannot fake authenticity. You cannot. And I will never forget these words coming to me that said, while authenticity alone doesn't automatically guarantee success, inauthenticity guarantees failure every time, right? Every time. So I was like, okay, I know what I've got to do, and I walked in that building, and I walked up, and there's a giant clock on the floor. So imagine you walk in this room, you see cameras, you know the second the red light goes on, you're live to 100 million homes, and there's a clock that started at 10 minutes. Then I learned you're not guaranteed your 10 minutes. They know by the second what you're selling, by the second. So if you're a minute or two in, and you think you have 8 minutes left, but you're not hitting numbers, your clock jumps to 1 minute, and you're done. So I learned that, and I was freaking out. I was praying so much, sweating. I remember sweat down my legs. I had on 2 pairs of Spanx, double Spanx. I didn't care how I looked, but I didn't want to sweat through my dress. And I was just okay, God, because it felt so heavy. And I remember the moment the red light goes on, and we're live. And I had practiced this demonstration on my wrist so many times where I bend it and the other concealers crease and ours doesn't. So good. And but now I'm live and I'm trying to do it and my hand's like this. And the host is like, thank you, sugar. And she pushed it under and she took over. And I remember the moment my bright red, bare face comes up on national television. I remember walking over to the models, every age, every shape, every size, every skin tone, every skin challenge, like calling them beautiful and like viscerally meaning it, every ounce of my being. And we were a few minutes in. I didn't know how we were doing, but I knew we weren't cut yet. So I was like, okay. And then we kept going and going. It got down to the 1 minute mark, and the host says, the deep shade's almost gone, the tan shade's almost sold out, and then the 10-minute mark, the giant sold out sign comes up across the screen. So I start crying. I start crying on national television, and they cut from me and went to Dyson vacuum or something. And I'm like, ah. And I remember my husband comes rushing through the double doors of the studio, and I'm sobbing. I'm like, real women have spoken. And like, I thought he's going to come hug me, right? And he just comes up to me, and he puts his fist in the air, and he's like, we're not going bankrupt. And I was like, ah. And the one airing led to 5 that year, 101 the next year, and then 250 live shows a year, year after year after. We built what became the biggest beauty brand in QVC's history. And I only share that because for years they said no, and you're not the right fit. Right? And then we started getting yeses from Sephora, from Ulta Beauty. We became the #1 brand in Ulta Beauty. It was like, whoa, like so much started happening. And after, remember Alan Burke with QVC who said, you're not the right fit for QVC or our customers? So after we launched, he became a dear friend, a great mentor in my life. He still is to this day. And he had been there for decades. So shortly after we launched, he ends up retiring from QVC. And when he retired, we hired him. Right? Yeah, in a paid position on our advisory board. So the guy that rejected me was now working for me. Only God. Only God. And I don't know who needs to hear this today, but nobody can tell you you're not the right fit. No one can tell you you're not the right fit. We kept growing, we grew internationally. I knew we needed a partner if we were going to expand like to all the countries efficiently, and because we tried to do it on ourselves, and I was like, okay, it'll go slow if we do it. And eventually, L'Oreal, after years of saying no, actually, which a lot of people don't know, they made an offer to buy our company. And y'all, that offer was so big. When I was waitressing at Denny's, I could have never imagined. But here's how God works. All the years L'Oreal even said no, what I didn't know is that what I believe in every ounce of my being now, God will block your value from people who aren't assigned to your destiny, right? It might be the relationship that didn't work out. It might be the friend that you're like, why don't they bring me into that friend group, right? It might be the investor that you don't know why, but they're saying no right now. Or it might be the retail partner not giving your business a break. But I believe in divine timing. I believe he'll block your value from people not assigned to your destiny, either forever or in that moment. And all of a sudden, when L'Oreal says, yes, we want to buy your company, a bunch of other people wanted to also. I was like, whoa, I only know how to hear no. Like, what's happening? And so then we went to L'Oreal and said no. Right? Yeah, because all the other offers were bigger. So then they came back with an offer that felt more than fair. Which is just wild. Again, only God. Y'all, this is none of me. And I know that in every ounce of my being, right? It's like all I did was answer the call and gave it what I had. But in 2016, L'Oreal paid $1.2 billion cash, which is wild. Yeah, and then for the business, and they made me the first woman to hold a CEO title in their 107-year history. And it's been the most wild journey. And now I am blessed to serve. I answer the call to step away. We doubled the size of the business, actually, 2 years after post-acquisition. And I wrote the book Worthy and Believe It and donate all the proceeds. And this year funded leadership training as well the past couple years in over 100 prisons and shelters. And when Pastor Jeannie asked me to be here, I just felt so convicted that I'm supposed to be for that one person in the room right now, or in the overflow room, or online watching live, who knows it's time in your life to answer the call, to not hit that do not disturb button anymore, to not believe the lies of our own self-doubt that tells us we're not enough. Because here's what I know for sure. When you go for it, I know this, y'all, and I've lived it. Like, even when you're answering God's call in your life, like, there will be people that still tell you, like, you don't have what it takes. Like, I doubt that you're qualified, you're weak. But then one day, they call you strong, right? There's going to be people that say, you're crazy. He wants to do what? What's he doing with his life, right? They'll call you crazy, but one day they call you genius, right? They might say, oh, she's so meek, she's so sweet, she's just a mom, she's so nice, she's so meek. Then one day they call you mogul, right? There's going to be people that say you're too young or you're too old or your body's not right or your cheeks are too red or you don't pray the right way or you don't come from the right family, you don't live in the right place. And then one day they're telling people how they met you. Right? One day they're telling people how they met you. And I know this for sure. There will be people that tell you, they call you rejected. They call you rejected, and then one day they call you boss. That's what I know for sure. And so today my hope and prayer is that when you walk out of this room, you answer the call, that you say yes, and that you get still and you trust the one who created you. The one who created you. And I just want to say thank you for the honor and the gift and the blessing of sharing this space, of celebrating God with you. And, the video that played earlier, when there's things that say things like self-made, right? This Forbes self-made list. I know 100%. I am God-made. I can't even get it twisted for a second. I can't even get it twisted for a second. And I just know beyond a shadow of a doubt that anything you feel convicted for, he will show up and that you're fully qualified for it. And so I just want to say thank you for the blessing of being here and for sharing this space. I love you, Soul City. Thank you, Jeannie.